So in the previous video, we talked about self-deception and the self-concept in some general terms. With this, I want to get into more specific ideas into why we do it and how we do it, and kind of what levels of sociality do we affect when we misrepresent ourselves, when we're lying to ourselves, or when we're fooling ourselves. Maybe that's a better way to put this part of it in terms of talking about self-deception. Understanding that lying to ourselves is both a social process and it's a psychological process as well. The social process obviously goes through and skews the way other people evaluate us, which is probably what we want if we're lying about ourselves to begin with. So we change the social construct or the social perception of who we are, okay? And then on the psychological side, it kind of goes without saying, we're not truly representing who we are psychologically. We're not putting our true selves, our impeccable selves out there like we talked about in our last in the last clip. And I got into a few reasons why, but I kind of want to expand on that a little bit here in some terms that Mark Knapp uses in the book, but also hopefully to kind of digest that a little bit so we can have a better understanding. He indicates that we do it to aggrandize ourselves, to make ourselves bigger than what we actually are. And if we're not happy with what we are, with who we are, then certainly we can go through and deceive others to think that maybe we are something different than what we are. I went to high school with a kid who after every weekend would come back and talk about no, it wasn't high school. It was my first year at college at Dixie State, at Dixie Junior College at the time. Yeah, that's where it was. And he would come back and brag about being a roadie for like AC/DC or Pink Floyd or some big rock band of my era. And he'd talk all about in incredible detail about what he did and how the band was great to him and all the chicks afterwards and so on. And the first time I'm like, I don't know, did he really do it? And the second time, it was so outlandish that we're all coming together like we do at the beginning of the year, in school. We don't know each other. And it's like the third and fourth and fifth time that he gets into it, we're like, we were probably a little on the ruthless side in making fun of him, but we didn't take it anymore. But he didn't ever back off. He didn't ever cop to it and say, okay, I was just pulling your leg or whatever. And now, and since studying all this for the decades that I have been doing that, I wonder, what kind of disservices did we do in not calling him out on it, not saying, hey, we think you're okay the way you are. You don't have to go through and impress us with your being a roadie. Yeah, you were waiting for me to go through and say, and come to find out, he really was a roadie for AC/DC. Yeah, that'd be a better story, right? I could have lied, I guess, to make that a better story, to make this more funny, because we lie to be funnier too, right? We all like to laugh. We like to have that joke out there. We like to have that endearing, humorous quality to it because it resonates with us. We like people who make us laugh. We like people who are funny and outgoing and charismatic there. And you know what? I just defined 3 different traits of a narcissist too, by the way, which we'll get into in another video. So we lie to make ourselves bigger than what we actually are. Better, more colorful, more interesting. We lie to fill in gaps and to create continuity between our past and where we are now. Gosh, one of my favorite songs by Crosby, Stills, and Nash is "Don't Let the Past Remind Us of Who We Are Not Now." Oh. Wow. And we might lie in order to go through and do that. We might lie to justify. Well, the reason why I'm so angry is because I was I dealt with an angry teacher when I was a kid. And that might not be so far from the truth, but we're still trying to find some justification. We go through and hang that on something. In going through and tying the past and its effects, whatever they might be, psychologically or socially, to how we're behaving currently. We're trying to bring those two things together. Knapp says that we lie to increase our projected sincerity in others, that, well, I really like you, or I think what you have to say is really important. This drives me crazy in human resource management, because there are several programs out there that are designed to go through and set up individuals, I think, in circumstances that aren't very productive. And I'm not, let me see if I can clarify. So we've all heard about, well, you give them 7 good things about themselves, and then you drop the bomb, right, on as far as why they're not doing so well. And in a way, you know, if you're dealing with an employee or a child or a student or whatever the case might be, and something really needs to be said, you're being self-deceiving when you go through and say, you know, I really like the way you've been doing this, and the way you've been coming to work on time, and, you know, everything else has been really working out really well. But when you went through and slashed the tires of your coworker, well, then we kind of have to draw the line there. I know that's not what Knapp's getting into here when he's talking about increasing projected sincerity, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. And it's crazy to do that, that we're faking it, that we're putting on the smile. Ah, yes, I really do like you. And yeah, sure, let's go to lunch together. That would be a lot of fun. And yeah, that's that increased projection of sincerity. And okay, next one. Perpetuate optimism to heal or have something to look forward to. This might be getting a little bit more or kumbaya. We're just trying to make everybody happy, and, you know, hey, it's not so bad. Just wait until we get our tax returns. Or you know, I feel pretty optimistic when, in fact, I really don't feel optimistic at all. But we're trying to put on a happy face. That might be more face saving than anything. And lastly, it gets into increasing motivation, even delusion in competitive performance. That a lot of us are raised with the concept that we can do anything, right? We have people, however well-intended, and it could be our dads, it could be our coaches, it could be our teachers or whatever, and they they tell us, hey, we can do anything. Do it, you can do anything, right? You can get out there. I took my son to a soccer game when he was a little kid. We were in San Diego, and it was a youth soccer thing going on, and there was this one kid who he didn't like what he was doing. He didn't belong there. He was just a barrier, a bump to anybody else. But his father on the sidelines was just screaming at him, "You can do it! And run, kick the ball! You can do it! Get in there, tackle him! You can do anything! You can do anything!" And he repeated that a lot over the course of this game. And again, the kid, his heart just wasn't in it, and he didn't have the athleticism that the other kids did, and it was tough, right? So on the way home, my son and I are talking in the car, and he's like, "Did you hear that, Dad?" I was like, "Yeah." I said, "I'm never going to tell you that you can do anything, because you can't. You can't do anything." Here's how that rolls, though. You don't know what you can't do. And that's the truth. That's not a lie. The lie is, I can do anything. And while there's some perceived optimism in that, I can't do brain surgery. I can't hit the apex of a corner on a racetrack on my motorcycle the way I would like to. I can't. Gosh, there's all kinds of things I can't do, right? But I know what I can do, and I don't know what I can't do. A little while ago, I was riding the Schaefer Trail in Moab on my motorcycle, and it's a pretty interesting technical trail. It descends down the face of a cliff on these switchbacks, and there's a lot of shale, it's slippery, and, you know, and I'm not a big off-road rider. I just bought my bike not too long ago, and I'm just trying to get into this whole concept of dual sport. And I figured, well, you know, I'll do it or I'll die trying, kind of thing, right? And so, I'm sorry, long story short, I did it really well, and I had a blast, and my bike just did everything that it needed to do. In fact, all I needed to do was trust not me, but my motorcycle to go through and get us through the 48 some odd miles of incredibly technical terrain to drop me back down at the Colorado River in Moab. And it worked. My point to all that is we can't delude ourselves by thinking we can do anything. We don't know what we can't do until we actually give it a shot, and we might fail, or we might succeed and have a good time like I did on my bike in Moab. How do we do it? Well, Knapp goes through and says that we create certain biases. And so I'm going to use an example in terms of the most prevalent bias, I think, that exists in the United States, if not the world, is I am a better driver than you are. All right? Fair enough to go through and say that? That's a bias. It's an inherent bias. And we look for feedback, or we might create our own evidence, our own feedback. Well, I haven't had an accident in a long time, and had an accident in 20, knock on wood. I haven't had an accident, and the only wood's behind me there on the screen door. You understand what I'm saying, though? I mean, we look for evidence that might uphold the bias that, well, we're the better driver, right? We're the greatest drivers that are out there. And we look to identify certain traits within that. Well, I always check my blind spot. I don't have any moving violations, any tickets, at least none that I'll cop to and tell you about. Hey. This guy riding his bike by, and it's fuchsia and seafoam green, and he's really enjoying himself on it as well. Then we maintain the bias there, you know. If we have, I accidentally cut somebody off, and I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just cut that guy off, and I feel so bad, and you know. Or I might go through and defend my bias, my self-deception, my fooling myself that I am the best driver out there by going and saying, what the hell do you think you were doing cutting me off like that? I'm in the right because obviously I'm the better driver, right? Does that sound familiar? Is any of this resonating with you? Yeah, it's a little disconcerting when we get into that process. And then we get into self-defense. There goes the bountiful police. Then we get into we get into denial maybe of what might be counter intuitive to whatever that bias might be. Well, actually, you know, you scrub your tires so much that you don't have your white lettering on them anymore, or you've got all these little dings from cars that you've rubbed in the parking lot going in and out. But you don't, you're like, well, how did that happen? Not realizing maybe that was you. Or we rationalize our biases in that respect. He gets into repression, disassociation, and rejection. I get into a little bit more severe biases that might have something to do more psychopathically with us in terms of how we lie to ourselves. And I'm going to save that for another video as we get into narcissism and the psychopathic liar, which we'll do, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks that way. All right? Okay. Again, if you have any questions, you know where to find me. We might be looking for a discussion on this. Glad to have you with me back on the porch. Talk to you later.